The breaking point wasn't one moment. It was 100 small ones, and the palace let them happen. Line them up in order, as this script is about to do, and a pattern emerges that is very hard to explain away. To understand what happened to Meghan Markle inside the British royal family, you first have to understand the machine she married into. The institution known informally as the firm does not operate like a family. It operates like a centuries-old corporation with a communications department, a hierarchy of competing households, and a press ecosystem purpose-built around access as currency. That ecosystem is the Royal Rota. Formally established in the late 1970s after overcrowding at royal engagements became unmanageable, it functions as a closed pool arrangement. A select group of British outlets, the Daily Express, the Daily Mail, the Daily Mirror, the Evening Standard, the Telegraph, the Times, and the Sun in print, the BBC, ITN, and Sky News for broadcast, are granted exclusive access to royal events, on the understanding that their material gets shared. Access in exchange for proximity. Proximity in exchange for coverage. And coverage in exchange for something harder to quantify, but entirely real. Harry stated it plainly in his 2022 Netflix documentary. There's leaking, but there's also planting of stories. If the communications team wants to be able to remove a negative story about their principal, they will trade and give you something about someone else's principal. He added that he and William had once promised each other their press offices would never operate this way, and that his brother didn't hold up his end. In a separate moment, he described the arrangement as an invisible contract, his phrase from the Oprah interview, where tabloid access to royal life buys a degree of narrative protection for those who play along. The palace has never confirmed this arrangement. It has also, notably, never credibly denied the mechanics. And the mechanics matter, because they are the structural spine of everything that followed. On May 19, 2018, Harry and Meghan were married at St. George's Chapel, Windsor. The coverage was near universally warm. Meghan was framed by commentators as a modernizing force, the first biracial American divorcée to join the senior ranks of the modern British royal family. The institution, they said, was evolving. Whatever came next, that morning felt like a genuine opening. It closed faster than anyone publicly acknowledged. Within months, what Valentine Lowe documents in his 2022 book, Courtiers: The Hidden Power Behind the Crown, as a poisoned atmosphere had developed inside the joint household at Kensington Palace. Harry used the same word in spare. Both accounts describe an office where multiple senior staff members were in tears and where two competing households, the Cambridges and the Sussexes, were sharing a communications structure that served neither. Jason Nauf, an American-born communications secretary who had joined Kensington Palace in February 2015 from the Royal Bank of Scotland, was serving both households simultaneously. When their interests diverged, and by late 2018 they were diverging sharply, that dual arrangement became a problem with no clean resolution. The October 2018 royal tour of Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, and Tonga is the first major documented inflection point. Publicly, it was a triumph. Thousands lined the streets of Sydney. On the very first day, the couple announced Meghan's pregnancy with Archie. Press coverage was warm. Public reception, warmer still. Harry told Oprah in 2021 that the tour had changed things inside the family. It was the first time the family got to see how incredible she was at the job, he said. He appeared to suggest that her effortless connection with crowds had provoked something, comparison, perhaps, in the institution that was watching. Behind the scenes, Knauf later characterized the tour as having become very challenging, made worse, he said, by the behavior of the Duchess. The institutional machinery, whatever had occurred in Australia, was now in motion. 1 month after the tour, In November 2018, Meghan's personal assistant, Melissa Tubati, resigned. A French national who had previously worked for Robbie Williams and Madonna, Tubati had joined the household specifically to help prepare for the wedding. She lasted approximately 6 months. Reports described her as having been reduced to tears by the demands placed on her. Within weeks of Tubati's departure, the Sunday Times published "The Duchess Difficult" headline, citing accounts from staff who found her a demanding employer. Then there is the Knauf email. In October 2018, while the Australia tour was still being processed internally, Knauf filed a written complaint. He sent it to Prince William's private secretary, not to the palace HR department, and not to the Queen's household, but specifically to William's private secretary. The email stated, "I am very concerned that the Duchess was able to bully 2 PAs out of the household in the past year. The treatment of was totally unacceptable." It continued, "The Duchess seems intent on always having someone in her sights. She is bullying and seeking to undermine her confidence. We have had report after report from people who have witnessed unacceptable behavior." The email wasn't acted upon. Palace investigations would later confirm that Knauf raised these concerns multiple times and that the institution didn't pursue them formally. Whether that reflects a genuine assessment that the claims were insufficient or a deliberate institutional decision to leave the matter unresolved isn't something the record clarifies. What the record does clarify is what happened to that email next. 2 years and 5 months passed. It sat, unaddressed, inside the palace bureaucracy. Then, in late February 2021, with Harry and Meghan scheduled to broadcast their Oprah interview on March 7th, the Times published its contents. Through a leak. Not a formal investigation, not an official statement. A leak. Time to land in the public domain days before the couple's most consequential media appearance. Buckingham Palace announced an independent review. In June 2022, it confirmed that PR policy changes had been made. It declined to publish a single finding from the review. Meghan's legal team denied the bullying allegations. Knauf, by that point, was CEO of William's Royal Foundation and serving on the board of the Earthshot Prize. In 2023, Prince William appointed him a Lieutenant of the Royal Victorian Order, an honor granted personally by the sovereign or heir for distinguished service to the royal family. The staffing crisis ran deeper than Tubati's departure. Samantha Cohen had brought genuine institutional weight to the role of private secretary. She had been assistant private secretary to the Queen from 2011 to 2018 and head of royal communications before that. She agreed to a 6-month interim posting with the Sussexes. She stayed 18. "We couldn't find a replacement for me," she told an Australian publication. "And when we did, we took them on tour to Africa with Harry and Meghan to show them the ropes. But they left, quit, as well while in Africa." Cohen departed in October 2019. By any measure, the Sussex household staff retention rate was exceptional by royal standards, and not in a positive sense. Multiple former aides described, across Valentine Lowe's Courtiers and Tina Brown's The Palace Papers, an environment of escalating demands and emotional unpredictability. Meghan's supporters, and Meghan herself in the Oprah interview, framed those same accounts as the distorted perspective of aides institutionally loyal to a palace that had already decided she was the problem. Both versions can't be wholly accurate. What neither disputes is the turnover itself. In January 2019, Meghan told Harry for the first time she was experiencing suicidal thoughts. She was pregnant with Archie. She was simultaneously the subject of a sustained and intensifying British tabloid press campaign that she had been given no institutional tools to combat. She described what happened next in the Oprah interview. She approached the institution for help. Not Harry's family directly, but the formal institutional structure, its HR apparatus. She said she asked to seek inpatient psychiatric care and was told it wasn't possible because, as HR explained, she wasn't a paid employee of the institution. Harry corroborated this in spare, describing his horror at attending a formal engagement and understanding, in real time, the scale of what Meghan was concealing behind public composure. Buckingham Palace's official response to the Oprah interview didn't state that this conversation didn't happen. The palace's statement, issued on behalf of Queen Elizabeth II, acknowledged that the issues raised, particularly that of race, are concerning, and noted that recollections may vary. It didn't deny the HR exchange. No aide has gone on record since to contradict Meghan's account of it. An institution with a duty of care toward its members would have found another way. The record does not indicate it tried. The private collapse went public in October 2019. ITV broadcast Harry and Meghan, an African journey, filmed during the couple's 10-day Southern Africa tour. Tom Bradby, then presenter of News at 10 and a long-standing personal friend of Harry, was given unusual access. On camera, he asked Meghan a straightforward question. "Are you okay?" She gave an answer the institution couldn't manage. "Not many people have asked if I'm okay," she said. "It's a very real thing to be going through behind the scenes." In a separate interview, Harry told Bradby that he and William were on different paths, and that his father and his brother were trapped, that they had, unlike him, made peace with a life he was no longer willing to sustain. The palace didn't attempt to prevent broadcast. It gave the public its first direct view of a fracture that had been building for 18 months behind press releases and protocol. On January 8, 2020, Harry and Meghan published a statement on Instagram and their newly launched Sussex Royal website, announcing they intended to step back as senior members of the royal family, split their time between the United Kingdom and North America, and become financially independent. They had not notified the palace in advance. Harry writes in spare that they went public without approval because they had learned the Sun was about to publish the story, sourced, he alleges, from Charles's communications office. The institution had forced their hand. Queen Elizabeth convened the Sandringham Summit on January 13th. 4 people attended: the Queen, then Prince Charles, Prince William, and Harry. Meghan was in Canada. The couple's proposal, a half-in, half-out arrangement allowing them to retain some royal duties while earning private income, was refused outright. The Queen's statement issued 5 days later confirmed there would be no working compromise. From April 1, 2020, the couple would withdraw from active royal duties, surrender use of their HRH titles in a working capacity, repay the £2.4 million renovation costs of Frogmore Cottage, and Harry would relinquish his military appointments. The palace declined the half-in arrangement on the grounds that it would establish an unworkable precedent. The determination of who is or isn't a working royal rests with the monarch. No letters patent, no statute, no constitutional instrument required the outcome to be what it was. A hard Megxit, as observers characterized it at the time, wasn't the only available outcome. It was the chosen one. Harry and Meghan's interview with Oprah Winfrey, broadcast on CBS on March 7, 2021, ran approximately 2 hours. Treat it as a source document, because that's what it is. The claims Meghan made are specific enough to assess. She alleged that before Archie's birth, a member of the royal family raised concerns about the potential skin color of her unborn child. Harry confirmed it, specifying it was neither the Queen nor Prince Philip. The palace's official response didn't deny the conversation occurred. Prince William, asked at a school visit days after broadcast, said only, "We are very much not a racist family." That sentence is a denial of character. It isn't a denial of a specific exchange. She alleged that Archie wasn't given the title of prince in a manner that departed from established convention, noting that the title carries with it security entitlements that Archie, without it, wouldn't receive. Under the letters patent that governs royal titles, the question of advance designation during the Queen's reign was a matter of royal discretion. The palace exercised that discretion in a particular direction and has offered no comprehensive explanation for why. She described the mental health crisis. She described being blocked from defending herself against press attacks by an institution that could have intervened with the same tabloids it hosted for Christmas parties at the palace. Buckingham Palace's response to the Oprah interview addressed none of these specific claims. It stated that recollections may vary and that the family was saddened. When an institution responds to allegations of this gravity by saying, recollections may vary, rather than, this didn't happen, it's making a precise calculation about what it can and can't afford to deny outright. The racial dimension of this story resists assertion. It requires evidence. Researchers and media analysts documented a sustained pattern in British tabloid coverage between 2018 and 2019. The mechanism was comparative framing. Identical behaviors attributed opposite valences, depending on whether Meghan or Catherine was the subject. Catherine touching her baby bump during pregnancy was covered as radiant and maternal. Meghan doing the same was described as theatrical. Meghan eating avocado toast was linked in the Daily Mail to drought, conflict, and human suffering, a connection the Mail didn't make about identical behavior by other public figures. Media analysts have documented this comparative framing as a structural pattern in the Mail's coverage of Meghan's maternity, not a series of isolated editorial choices. Harry told Oprah he had raised concerns about the coverage's racial dimension with the institution before the wedding. It told him, he said, it had no power over the press. An institution that operates the Royal Rota, trades stories through its communications offices, and hosts tabloid editors for Christmas parties at the palace, isn't powerless over the British press. It chose not to exercise its influence in this direction. The breaking point wasn't one moment. It was 100 small ones. The October 2018 bullying email, filed to a brother's private secretary and left unaddressed for 2.5 years, then leaked to a newspaper 3 days before the most consequential interview the subject had ever given. Melissa Tubati, in tears, gone within 6 months. Samantha Cohen's replacement, quitting on an African tour while the institutional search for someone to fill the role continued. The Sunday Times headline arriving while the institution's protocols offered Meghan no mechanism to respond. A woman in a genuine mental health crisis, pregnant, describing suicidal thoughts to an HR structure that told her no. A summit convened at Sandringham after the couple had been forced to announce their own departure, with Meghan excluded, negotiating her future by phone from Canada, where every term requested was refused. And then, a palace response to an Oprah Winfrey interview that said, recollections may vary, about a woman who had described wanting to die. Each moment, standing alone, is explainable. Staff difficulties happen in every organization. Communication failures happen. Every large institution makes decisions under pressure that look, in retrospect, inadequate. The pattern becomes visible only in the sequence. And what the sequence shows is this. At every single juncture where the institution was forced to choose between protecting Meghan and protecting itself, it made the same choice. Without exception, over 3 years. The firm isn't a villain in a screenplay. It's an institution behaving exactly as ancient institutions behave, preserving hierarchy, managing access, and treating its own continuity as the primary value above all else. The never complain, never explain doctrine that has governed royal communications for generations wasn't designed to protect individuals from public scrutiny. It was designed to protect the institution from accountability. Meghan didn't misunderstand that doctrine. She encountered it at its most direct, at a moment of genuine personal crisis, and was given its operating logic as her answer. When she finally did complain, to Oprah, to Netflix, to the pages of Spare, The institution responded exactly as the doctrine always produces, not with denial, not with engagement, not with apology. With a statement, carefully worded, noting that recollections may vary. The documented record doesn't ask you to decide whether Meghan was a perfect person or a perfect royal. It asks something more precise: whether an institution, presented with a human being in genuine crisis, made any genuine effort to keep her, or whether it did what institutions always do and waited for the problem to leave. The record suggests it waited. Subscribe for more stories like this.